we're going to dive we're going to dive into why the market you thought you knew is gone and what you need to be doing instead. So it's not about hype and it's definitely not about hope because hope isn't a strategy. So I want to get you to start thinking about things just a little bit differently. This is about true strategy, it's about structure and momentum. And it all starts right here. So let's take a look. Let me get my PowerPoint up and hang on, I got to cheat with the glasses. Ta-da, ta-da. All right. I just love technical challenges, don't you?
No problem. You able to find it?
It's just not showing up in the Zoom share, like I'm hitting the share button, but it's not pulling up the presentation for whatever reason. So
Just make sure you're sharing a Tyler's screen. That usually helps.
it didn't even give me that option.
On the bottom, does it say where it should share screen?
It does. Well, so it's showing, hang tight, let me get there. So I hit share. And then, okay, so
Oh, there you
can you at
go.
least, can you at least, whoops, why is it pulling from, it's not pulling from PowerPoint. That's really strange. I've got the PowerPoint program open.
I think you share by only share by screen. So maybe you could just share the screen that you want to share and just go from there. You just had it up.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try this again. Goodness gracious. Let's go back to the Zoom. There we go. Ha 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 ha. I don't know why I didn't want to do that before. All right. Has everybody
There
got
you go.
that?
Yep.
All right. So, okay. All set now. All right. Helps with the glasses. The strategies that we used to have um, in 2019 just really, while we were able to do a whole lot through COVID, they're just not working anymore. Buy and hold strategies, they've kind of got punished also. And really in 2022, but now lately, with all of the chop and flop and with what's going on in the headlines, do we even really know what we can count on? And that's what we're going to answer today. And we're going to work irrespective of that. So, what about meme stock chasers? Those are some other folks that have also gotten wiped out. Even companies with great earnings, they got crushed by market sentiment and timing. So, while we're entering yet another market cycle, and what we know is that it doesn't reward hope, it rewards precision and a framework that you can trust. So, have you ever found yourself sitting in a trade and thinking, wait a minute, what do I do now? Do I hang on to it? I know what I've achieved so far. Do I stay with it? These are the questions that are on a lot of people's minds. I know that I've made those same questions once I got into a stock. I was like, okay, now what? And a lot of traders are feeling that way. They're following stock pickers and sometimes without context. And I know that that's exactly what I did because I was like, oh, well, they have the crystal ball. They must know everything. And so I just kind of went with that. And I'll tell you why that was a really unusual position for me to be in based on my history. But they're like watching YouTube setups that don't actually match their goals or their risk profile. But what happens when the market turns or the chart surprises them? They freeze, they panic, and they hold. Or that's when they cross their fingers and start hoping. And I know that that's what I did too. And I got baked several times because that was not a strategy. Hope is never a strategy. So all of these mistakes, I've been there and I get it. And that's what was the impetus for me to actually build a system and to get out of that cycle and to try to really figure out what works, not just following somebody blindly. Whoops, I'm pushing all kind of buttons here. Not just following someone blindly, telling me to get into or out of something. I needed to know why I was doing it so I could be successful. And even if my connection to my stock picker timed out or I was cut off for whatever reason, I needed to be able to make those decisions effectively myself. And quite honestly, right before the trade, before I was even in the stock, I needed to know when I was getting in and when I was getting out. That way, I could mitigate my risk and manage my risk tolerances more effectively over my whole portfolio. So, what if I told you that the only thing standing between you and your trading chaos and your next breakthrough is this repeatable strategy that fits you? So you're going to walk away today with a real system. It's the one that I used to go from ground zero to six figures during one of the hardest times of my life. And I'll show you how to use options and not to gamble, but to gain control. I'm going to teach you my basics framework, and I'll also show you how you can create your own wealth velocity blueprint with the ground zero to growth option strategy I'm going to share today. It's a step-by-step process for trading with clarity and confidence. So if you've ever been hesitant to trade options because you thought they were too risky or too complicated, or that it was probably a setup for failure, when actually used correctly, options let you control more with less. They allow you to define your risk before you ever click buy. And then when they're paired with smart timing and filters, they don't just work, they win. And that's the lever I want to hand you today. So let's take a look at some examples here. So moonshots are real. If you know when to exit, and that's the key, getting in, finding it before it runs, that's one thing. But when do you know to get out? And this is a really great example. So it's stock symbol VGVYF. And everybody wants to chase those moonshots. I mean, who doesn't want to put in a dollar and get 1,000 out, right? So they do exist. They are real, but we have to meter the exit. So VGVYF, they were a cryptocurrency exchange. So if you've ever seen a stock explode upward and thought, if I'd only gotten in early, this was the one. Now, if you had gotten in, what if you decided to switch your strategy midstream because you didn't have one to start with and you thought, oh, well, I got in so cheap, I'm going to just buy and hold this. And you didn't know when to get out. That's what happened with Voyager. I got in before the crypto hype wave caught fire. And we rode this until 189% return we were able to realize. But the biggest problem with these guys, they went bankrupt. So a lot of people were holding back. They just closed the exchange. Nobody could get any money in or out, and they're still in bankruptcy courts. The stock isn't traded, but this wasn't what I would call a quality win because I got lucky. All right. I was doing a system of someone else's and I didn't know why it was working. Even while I was still learning and following someone else's pick, the system that told me why it was a good time to exit was when I exited. And I had to go back and study that to really figure this out. And a moonshot without a plan is not a win. It's a time bomb. And as the futurist George Gilder said once in an interview on my show, the greatest fortunes are made on moonshots. But I want to caution you by saying the only disciplined folks get to keep it. So that's what you have to think about in terms of moonshots. Yeah, we all want that grand slam, but it's okay if we just take profits before we get there, before we do this buy and hold strategy. Now, there's myriad strategies out there, but if you're like me when I was in my 50s or my 40s and I had to start over because I got wiped, I made some improper business investments, you're like, okay, I can't dollar cost average like they taught me when I was 18. Now you have to be able to create some velocity with your money, and options chosen strategically is the way to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about discipline, and I'm going to hand you that structure today. So everybody wants that moonshot, right? But what about something that looks really good on paper and then all of a sudden you get wiped out? That's this next one here that we're going to talk about. And I was a really big fan of this WWE. So it was a perfect looking trade. And then something totally unrelated to the business tanked it. And the chart was clean, the setup was solid, and then a scandal broke out involving Vince McMahon, and the headlines lit up. I remember it clear as day. I was walking out of a real estate closing, and everybody started blowing up my phones. Oh my gosh, did you hear what happened? The stock dropped like a rock, but not because of fundamentals, but because of media pressure and the public narrative. His daughter was already running the company. He was just pretty much the figurehead holding the seat, and it wound up costing. The financials were super strong, but the public did not care. They cared about the scandal. And in the aftermath of Me Too, the narrative took over. And this is where the overreaction happens. Unchecked physiological dysregulation. Our emotions hijacked our trades. And this is what happens and why psychology plays a huge part in what we do as we set up our trader confidence. Because we act instinctively when we feel threatened. It's part of our DNA. And instead of thoughtfully responding, we instinctively react and we get into or out of a trade too soon. And that's this layer that I use in my filters when I start screening for stocks. And this is called the hype factor in my strategy, because the market isn't just driven by the math, it's driven by emotion and noise. And if you don't know how to track the crowd, you'll end up on the wrong side of the pop, or in this case, the drop. So we saw a huge number. Take a look at this. So I got to cheat again so I can look at this. So before the scandal, $68 a share. Following the revelations, $60, and they lost $500 million. That's $500 million. And all because of somebody's poor choices that got amplified by the media. So this is where you can get cooked, even in a good trade. This was totally solid, but life happens. So we can screen for stuff as best we can, but we have to be aware of those influences and be able to move strategically and exit a position if all of a sudden the tides change. But now I've got another one for you. So you don't need a moonshot to double your money. All right. So this one, NVIDIA, right? Everybody loves NVIDIA. So this trade, if we take a look here in October of 2024, they had formed a classic double bottom around the 120 level. So I use specific filters. My momentum was right where I wanted it. The sector strength was picking up. The hype factor was fading off just enough, and smart money started to trickle back in. And key earnings data was now coming into view. So the stock went from 120 to 140 in just a few weeks. That was a 16% move. So if you're in the stock, woo, right? It's like so great. So that sounds like a big win. However, all of that made the options move 100%. Think about why that's important, because in options, you only need to risk a fraction of that capital to control the same amount of shares. And so your capital isn't tied up. You can also now have additional positions, because instead of spending all that money in one share, you can now control 100 shares for a fraction of what it would cost you to buy 100 shares. And we all start at the very bottom, right? When we're entry level traders. So that's a good move for us, because what if we don't have tens of thousands of dollars to get started trading options, right? Or to even trade the base stock itself. So it's important that we use contracts to help us amplify our earnings and create velocity with the money that we have, so we can make more of it in less time. So this was a really great one, and I was really happy with this guy. Now, the reason why this is so powerful when we pair the stock with the option is, I call it our stock flow multiplier, because it's the strategy that let me rebuild when I had no room for error. right? I didn't have another 30 years of youth on my side to work those 80-hour work weeks to make the money back. And it's not about swinging big, right? We can have those moonshots, but it's about setting ourselves up smart. Base hit, base hit, base hit. NVIDIA's October 24 performance is a great example of a base hit. We got the double bottom. Most traders were scared. Headlines were noisy. I mean, that's just not that many months ago. It didn't look like it would be so great, but the setup was clean. And again, when I ran it through my filters, we saw all of the right moves on each layer of risk that we evaluate. So taking that slightly out of the money call, just above 140, and I gave myself about a month or so to make it come in. The stock bounced, and there you have it. Now we have a nice tidy win. We close out and we look for more transactions. So it's not gambling when we think about options because we're doing it strategically. We're just not randomly hoping to, oh my gosh, I wonder if I can get that candlestick to move in the right direction for me. So I get this trade today and I have to sit there at the screen all day, because all of us have lives. We're professionals, we're at the height of our careers, perhaps, and sitting to make up that money that maybe we made mistakes with before isn't at the forefront, nor do we even really have time. So that's why we have to have a more thoughtful approach when it comes to trading. So the 5 trade filters that I use before I ever enter a trade, a stock or a contract, it doesn't matter. I run it through these 5 filters. So we've got momentum and timing, sector flow and seasonality, contract quality and delta, narrative check or my hype factor, and exit logic before the entry. So this will take me from this looks good to wow, this is actually worth my capital. These filters don't just reduce risk, they give me confidence. And it's called the basics framework. So have you ever stared at a chart and asked, what am I even looking for? Right? What am I even looking for? And that's where this basics framework comes in. It's how I break down every trade from idea to execution. And it's not about being right, it's about being ready. So think about that. Would you rather be right or would you rather be lucky? And I'll take lucky every time over being right, because that's where we make the money. So let's take our first letter here in our basics framework. So first is behavior and bias, right? This is where we want to regulate before we execute. So this is about making sure that when we're trading, we're not upset because our kid just got into a fight and got kicked out of school, or the dog ate the sofa cushion, or your wife forgot your dry cleaning and now you don't have a suit to wear to work. This is about setting all of that aside so you can think clearly and not have a physiological response, right? This is what's key, having clarity before you take and act. And I like this because it starts with the letter B. And one of my favorite observations over the years, and after interviewing over 3,000 people on my various television programs, is there's one thing that separates billionaires from everybody else. And you know what that is? It's simple. The thing that separates billionaires from everybody else is physiological and emotional regulation. They don't get super worked up or excited when something goes well. And again, they don't get super disappointed or frustrated or angered when things don't. Because what billionaires teach us is that all emotions are neither good nor bad. They're just information. And so we have to interpret the information in our highest and best resource state. So we're not making emotional decisions, we're making strategic ones. So that's where this behavior and bias have to do with it. So now we're going to talk A. This is analysis. So this is our chart setup. So we're not chasing patterns, but we're using that information to help give us the data that we need to make effective decisions. We want to look at earnings. We want to look at all sorts of different fundamental analysis, layer that with our technical analysis, from what is going on, but we're not going to overly rely on any one of them. We need to think of this in terms of layers of risk, like lenders do when we talk about mortgage or loan underwriting. They have layers of risk, and you don't have to be 100% in each one, but you have to have enough in every category to say, I'm going to take this risk. So we're not chasing patterns, but we're using them to give us more of our timing that we need to be paying attention to. Sector strength is our next one. You want to swim with the current, not be fighting the tide. Something that really is funny that my grandfather used to say when I was younger, and it used to always confuse me. And then it would make me laugh because it had like a naughty word in it. And I was like, ugh. But my grandfather used to always say, we should all eat more poop because 5 billion flies can't be wrong. And when he said that, I was like, ew, that's gross. But that talks about lemmings or following the herd. But if the current is going that way and you see others making money and you can get in and set your get out properly, then don't fight the tide, roll with it. Institutional flow. So this is another flow that we need to be paying attention to. Are we watching whales swimming in, or are we just with a bunch of minnows? So we want to look for quiet accumulation and pay attention to who's buying and not just what's being bought. But we want to pay attention to who is buying, because that'll give you an indicator of investor confidence at the institutional level, because they're not going to take a ton of risk, right? They have so many people that they're responsible for. So when you see that money going in that direction and you see the institutions coming in, that's a level of confidence from tons of analysts, right? Much smarter than me. So I look at it in that sense. So if I can get information from quality sources of people that are smarter than me, then that's where I want to go. And so when the institutional flow kicks in, that's just another layer of confidence that helps you mitigate some of the risk. And catalysts, right? You turn on the TV every day and you hear the catalysts, earnings, Fed meetings, presidents doing things, making, ultimatums and all kinds of comments in the press. We watch business titans doing their thing, right? And so we hear these people making these moves. Some of them are legal. Some of them are part of our hype factor, which we're going to talk about next. But it all matters because these things move markets, because people trade on emotion, right? Most investors trade on emotion unless it's their business and they're running an institution or trading on behalf of others. So if they're not professionals, that's what's driving your market. And you need to pay attention to the things that can influence investor sentiment. And some of those things are your catalysts. Earnings reports are big ones. We've just been going through a bunch of earnings lately. Fed meetings, everybody's anticipating what's going to happen with the Fed. So these are things that add another layer of risk for us to analyze. And then finally, the setup and hype factor. So narrative is almost more important than what the company is saying about themselves. It's what everybody else is saying. I remember probably 25 years ago watching Oprah talk about how she picked stocks. And she says, well, I just looked around and I saw all these kids with sneakers with swooshes on them. And that's what drove her to invest in Nike. So narrative can move the chart silently by just seeing what's happening around you and being aware of trends and also what you're hearing in the media. So we can take in all of these sources, and that hype factor, whether people are for it or against it, can give us investor confidence, especially with options. Because the beauty about options is the stock doesn't have to perform depending on the type of option you buy. You can bet on somebody going down just like you can somebody rising up. So this is the one that gets us ready for the pop or drop and how to move accordingly. So oops. I lost my thing here. Okay, here we go. Whoops, I skipped too far. All right, here we go. So I'm going to tell you something that I don't ever get to talk about as much. This system that I devised over years of making mistakes and learning, right? So I look at life like I never lose. I either win or I learn, right? And people pay to go to college or technical school, right? So when I make a mistake, I just paid to learn what not to do again. So that's kind of my thought process from that. But in addition to making mistakes, my ability to win has come from a lifetime of learning how to ask better questions. I had my stockbroker's license in my 20s, but all I learned, other than passing the exam, was that it taught me how to sell products, not how to think about the market. I wasn't an analyst. I wasn't picking anything. I walked in and I saw what symbols were on the board, and that's what we were selling that day. So, what changed everything was being able to make my own mistakes and ask those better questions, sitting down with people who actually move markets. So, I got to interview Art Laffer a couple of years ago, the guy behind the Laffer curve. And he had a really interesting perspective on taxation. And if you followed any of his work, if you sat in that Ferris Bueller class and listened to Ben Stein tell us about money, then you know who Art Laffer is. And one of the greatest things is to be able to glean the wisdom from others so you don't have to make those mistakes. Dear friend of mine and behavioral finance strategist and wealth manager, Harry Abramson, he's also the author of Money Rules. He's helped me understand a whole lot about investor psychology and why you need to learn how to manage the small money. Otherwise, you'll never be able to manage the big money. So when I say that, think in terms of professional athletes, actors, musicians, people that struggled, and didn't have the investor wherewithal, and then all of a sudden made it big and lost it all. So understanding how to manage money on the small level lets us manage it bigger. And Harry Abramson started helping me think like the rich. Rich Checken helped flesh out my background as a precious metals expert. I never thought much about precious metals until I had the opportunity to spend some time with him and I got to interview him. I've participated in all kinds of speaking events with Rich, and he was able to share why we need to use it as a tool and not a goal. These people, what do they all have in common? They don't guess, they use systems. And now it's your turn. So if you had access to a system that made you feel clear and confident and in control every time you traded, would you use it? So I just shared with you how I think about investing, and I want to give you that same process. So it's my wealth velocity blueprint from my ground zero to growth strategy using options. It's not a course, it's a system. And here's what you get with that system. So you get the 5 core training modules. And in these modules, I give you the specific techniques of how I select my stocks. We go into each layer specifically, and we learn not just what should we be measuring, but what makes it a successful measurement, or maybe this isn't an effective trade for us, and maybe we need to let this go for a while. It also gives you real trades broken down in 5 separate steps. So we'll not only take the theory of how this strategy works, but then we will take this formula and we will apply it to individual companies to see how they rank. I've created a ranking system that allows you to determine if this is a worthwhile investment based on not just the trade or the company itself, but on your investor risk profile. So I'm also going to include in this a position sizing calculator so you can invest at your level and at your risk tolerance. And something else that we have that we're launching is a founders only support group. And this is our own private community where we can start evaluating companies and sharing what we've learned and have conversations, because everybody brings something different to the table. And maybe your opinion about a particular company is weighted by hype factor. Well, someone else might be looking more at fundamentals. So here's a great way to exchange with other folks, like-minded individuals, learning at the same pace that you're learning. And what's really great about this is because I have pulled together a really neat bundle for you. So for this webinar, you'll have, in addition to all of the course, you'll have the market timing blueprint. You'll have our time advantage playbook, our trade ready checklist, our founders group access. And for the first 10 who enroll today, you'll get a private one-on-one strategy call with me. And in this strategy call, we're going to go over your risk tolerance and your goals and find out what's right for you. So here's what you're getting in this. So we've estimated the value at $1,879 with all of the bonuses included. So when this website goes live next week, we're going to be offering this course at $595. Because you're here live, you're participating in this event, you'll get all of these things, and you'll only have to pay a one-time payment of $295. It's your system, it's yours to keep for lifetime. You get access to the group, and there's no upsells. There's no subscriptions. Everything that you need to start trading options successfully is in this system. No assistant, no junior coach. When we do our one-on-ones, it's just you and me, and we dial in your blueprint. So all of this stuff, the training, the tools, the bonuses, again, you're getting almost $2,000 worth of value. And all it takes to get started today is $295. So I'm looking forward to all of your questions because I see that I'm getting messages that they're starting to come in. So no subscription fees, no surprises. You just get to make it happen. So if you're done guessing and you are ready to move on with purpose, just keep this in mind. I didn't build this course to sell it. I built it because I needed it. I had to have a strategy to make up for all of that time and lost money. And now I want to hand it to you. So if you're ready to stop chasing trades and start building wealth, all you have to do is go to tradethirsty.com/earn, and you can get started today. And let's get started together. So our class that we will do is going to be boot camp style, and it'll be a full workshop, and we'll spend one day at it. And it's on June 3rd, Tuesday, June 3rd. Join me and let's learn how to trade options successfully together. So I see here we have some questions. So let me go quickly to that. And so I have to push other buttons here in order to get back to that. Uh, all right, I'm pushing all the kind of wrong buttons. So it says, Mac is asking, is this really everything I need, or are there other tools? Nope, this is the entire system. One payment, no renewals. You get the full training, all of the tools and all of the bonuses. Oh, you know what I forgot to say? So on those analysis tools and this system that I built for ranking companies, yeah, I've built a little piece of software now, so you can have that answer in minutes instead of having to do hours of copious research and number crunching yourself. I've made it super simple for you. Okay, Samuel says, how much time does this take each week? Everybody learns at a different pace. We'll all go through the system together. It's about your building your confidence in being able to make effective decisions. So that part's on you. But the amount of time that you need, maybe 30 minutes. Once you make your stock selections, and you'll see why we do it in this fashion, and it's because the way we set it up, we're not looking for that day trade. We're not looking for that quick hit. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for where the bulls are running, where the bears are dropping, and we want to be strategic in our efforts. And so we want to evaluate the companies using these filters that I will teach you in the Ground Zero to Growth class. And it's important because you don't want to have to sit around. That's why I designed it. I've got things to do. I've got adventures on top of like working, right? I'm an adventure babe. I got to go out and do things, right? And enjoy the money that I'm making because tomorrow's never promised. So I don't like spending a whole lot of time trading, and I spend 20, 30 minutes a week at it. So you can do the same thing too with these tools that I've built and the system. Okay, Tran is asking, do I need to already be trading options for this program to work for me? No, not at all. I walk you through it step by step. Beginners and experienced traders will benefit on this. Okay. Philip is asking, how is this different from other trading courses out there? Well, the one thing that makes ours unique is that it's strategy first. It's not theory or signals. You're going to learn how to think like a trader with a proven strategy. So you're going to have the mental framework to make decisions on your own. And you won't have to follow someone else to get those picks, or you won't have to wonder, why is somebody investing in this? Like, if somebody is deviating from the flow, could there be a good reason? And is that within your investor risk profile to do so? So that's something that's really important to think about, because most of us don't think in terms of strategy first. What do? Like, you're sitting around the water cooler at work and somebody says, "Oh, hey, did you see this?" And everybody starts talking about a company or a stock. And then you're like, "Oh, well, I'm going to get in on it." And then you jump in and you buy it, and now you're watching it and you're like, okay, what next? How do I know how do I know how long I should let this go? Should I just take, this $1 or $2 gain, or do I wait and see what it's going to be? So this is why you need to have a strategy, because you'll know based on all of the criteria that you go through and all of the filters that these companies have to perform before you even say, yes, I'm going to make this trade. So that's something that we have to really consider. And we're not trying to follow signals or read signals or interpret them. We're trying to execute a strategy that's repeatable over and over, irrespective of what the market's doing, whether it's going up, down, or chopping all over the place. These are the things that we want to focus on. And with a strategy, we can avoid getting caught up in the hype factor ourselves and make effective decisions. Okay. Kane asks, what if I've lost money before? Will this help me rebuild? It's a great question. And the short answer is yes, because that's what I did. I used it to rebuild. I didn't build it for anybody else. I built it to make money for myself. And I thought, this is crazy that I was a stockbroker and I didn't have the wherewithal to make my own picks, that I relied on someone else. I had to pay them. And then it's not like I could pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, what do I do? How do I sit tight? Like, I'm getting alerts, what, once a week? If that, maybe they haven't talked about my particular holding in a couple of weeks, but I'm watching it move, but they haven't addressed it in their newsletter. What do I do? And I didn't want to be in that place anymore. I wanted to know what to do. I wanted to know when I was in, when I was out, and what to do in case a hype factor caused some sort of an influence. So, so yeah, I created this after losing everything. And because I had to sit and rethink how to approach the markets after this, because I was like, there are people getting rich every day. And all strategies have value. I mean, just think about a slot machine. If you sit and put in enough coins, at some point it's going to pay out, right? But you want to be able to put in the least amount of coins for the most amount of return. And so, how do we find a strategy that's effective? And that kind of is what drove my decision to figure out, how do I create velocity with money? I don't have time on my side to buy and hold. I need to start building back that wealth that I lost. So, how did I do that? And it was this strategy, using quality companies and buying the right options at the right time, knowing when I'm in and knowing when I'm exiting. And that makes it easier for you. It's like a rite of passage as a trader, to be able to get that level of confidence. And If you're not experienced and you've blown up quite a bit in your account, it's okay because we can hit the pause button and reset and start working on this. And uh, how about this? All of you in the chat, if you're following along, um, put a B in there if you're brave enough. B for brave, and B, I blew up my account because I know I've done that. And you watch the zeros just drop off, and you're like, what did I do? What did I miss? How did that happen? So the bottom line is this is your stopgap. So you don't keep blowing up your accounts, right? Because practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So we want to perfect our practice, and that's by having a solid strategy that's repeatable. Some other questions here. How long do I have access to the course? So you'll have lifetime access. You'll have no renewals, no expiration. You can revisit the content anytime. And of course, this online community that comes with the training is one of the biggest bonuses of all because it's not just enough to learn it. We have to practice the application of it, right? So if we think in terms of practice and what it does, we need to perfect our practice. And by being able to bounce our ideas off, is this an effective trade? Is this ineffective? Is your risk tolerance the same as mine? The ability to connect and communicate with other individuals at the same pace in your personal founders group, that's going to make all the difference for you because now it'll allow you to start cementing that theory into practice. It'll help you start becoming more effective at it. And we need to think about this in any new educational endeavor, whether we're learning to play golf or snowboard for the first time, whatever it is, we have to think of it as the first time we're going off road mentally, right? We're in new territory. We don't have a path to follow. We're just going, right? But if we end up on the other side, we're like, oh, okay, so now we can traverse that road back. And guess what? It's not as foreign as it was. And then the more we work that same path, the smoother the road gets. And then finally, we're kicking butt and we're hauling ass, right? And that's where we want to be able to be. And that's what the brain does, right? So the brain works, that you've probably heard of the term neurons that fire together, wire together. Well, that's what happens every time you carve a new path. And so learning this new skill, there's going to be a little bumps along the way. And so you've already had those bumps experiences. So what we're trying to do is mitigate that experience for you by giving you more tools to blaze your own trail and smooth that road as you go. And that's what the ground zero to growth strategy does, is it gives you that framework. So now if you just execute the framework consistently, that's what'll get you an amplified, quicker response because you'll be able to follow a proven system for success. And now all you have to do is emulate it. So you're going to shortcut the learning curve because you don't have to make all the mistakes I did in order to get there. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Okay. I'm already in a few trades. Can I apply this right away? Well, yes, trading is risky, as you know, especially if you've been burned. But because I'm not familiar with the trade that you're speaking of or what company you're looking at, but the short answer is yes. If you apply these filters, and once you start using this little piece of software that I helped you, that's going to cut your research time. So now all you have to do is make sure it meets criteria so you can start making more effective decisions with your trade. And based on how you come up with your risk profile assessment and whether or not that company meets that criteria, you can get started very quickly applying this system. Get your feet wet. And that's the key, is we're only going to learn by experience, right? All of the information in the world until practically applied doesn't become knowledge, right? Until we apply it. And then how the outcome we generate from that knowledge is what gives us the experience. And then that experience says, okay, I can do this. I can be successful. And that'll just reinforce your confidence and keep you going. So, oh, okay, this is a good one. So, can you explain more about the private call bonus? So this is really fun, and I'm really excited to be able to do this. So the first 10 attendees here today that enroll in our Ground Zero to Growth system, you're going to get a private one-on-one coaching session. And this is not just going to be about how much do you have, like where do you want to end up. We apply my 3-5 millionaire method from my personal finance section. And so the 3 questions that we're going to ask ourselves, and we're going to address 5 areas of concern. And then we're going to show you how this strategy fits into that. And those 3 questions are, where am I? Where am I going? And what's the difference? So I'm going to give you not only this framework, but I'm going to give you this 3-5 millionaire method that you can focus on to put the pieces together in the right order. And we just need to know, where are we? What's our balance sheet? How much do we have to invest? What kind of goals do we have? We go from that to goals first, or to goals next. And then once we understand what it is we want to achieve, and we set timelines, because most things are achievable. Are you going to be a millionaire by Friday? I don't know. Did you pick the winning lottery numbers? Because even that is risky, right? So you can be a millionaire. Everybody has the capacity to be a millionaire. You just have to ask yourself, when do I want to be that millionaire? And what am I willing to do to get there? Because choices have to be made. If you want to be able to make big money fast, you've got to be able to risk money, and you have to have the intestinal fortitude to see it through, right? And then we have that third question we answer, which is, what's the difference? And we have to measure our efforts and our outcomes. And did what actions we take generate the outcomes we desired? And if they haven't, then we've got to go back and just kind of rework all of that. And I'll just give it to you guys now, since we're on the subject of the 3-5 millionaire method. So you ask yourself 3 questions. This is from the book. And so you ask yourself 3 questions and address 5 areas of concern. And so these are income, expenses, and credit, right? Because we all have money coming in and going out, and some of it's not ours when we've borrowed it. Then we have protections, right? So think of protections as insurance, but not in the traditional sense that insurance costs you money. So insurance is actually insuring your success. And I think about it, insurance kind of works like options in a way, because you're renting millionaire status before you get there, right? So I don't have $1 million in the bank, but like, I drive on the road, and what if I cause a car accident, right? So I'm going to need to have money to pay this. Well, cars crumple up pretty quick, and they're quite expensive these days. So that bill is going to be high. So we use insurance to rent millionaire status to get us there, to cover that gap, right? And that's kind of what options are doing. We pay a small fee for a period of time to control part of the marketplace that we don't own, but we can make money on that control. And that's part of why I really like options a lot. And that's how insurance works as a tool for you. So then we go from income accumulation, that's the making and saving of money, the income acceleration, and that's what we're doing here today. This is where this piece fits in, because we are creating velocity with our money, and so we're using our money to work alongside of us. So we can have a job and we can collect a paycheck, but wouldn't it be great if we had little employees? And so if you think of your dollars as like little workers that you can put to work and make some money with. So now our money is working as hard as we are. And so that's what's really great. And then that final area of concern, and the biggest piece of that puzzle, is asset preservation. And so now we're talking about legacy building. We're talking about wealth preservation, tax mitigation, and how do we leave a legacy for our family and those who are important to us. And so that's the 3-5 millionaire method. And so we'll get a chance to go through that on this. And this one-on-one strategy will also be able to answer any questions you have, because you'll want to schedule your one-on-one after you've taken the boot camp and we've gone through the entire system itself. So that's the key piece for this. And that's what makes me so excited, because everybody has different goals and dreams. Everybody has a different vision for what they think wealth is and what they want to be doing when they are unable to work. And so so you want to start having your money work alongside you right now. And this is the way to do it. So let me just bring this offer up really quick one more time for you, so you can see all of the cool things that you can get. trying to find it here. Where did it go? Where's my list? All right. And then back to Zoom. And then share. Whoops, there we go. Okay, here we go. So this is what you get. 5 core modules to master the basics framework. You get the stock flow multiplier training. So this is the methodology that we use as we generate our stock and options choices. Then we're going to walk through all kind of trades using this system, and you'll get to actively work alongside me and understand the framework and help create the system so you build the foundation for success. We're going to take and we're going to give you our position sizing and risk profiler tools, because these are important. It's not about how much do you have to invest. It's like, do you have the intestinal fortitude to see the trades through? And how do we build that up? Just by doing it. But having this methodology in place gives you more confidence to be able to do it successfully. And then you'll also have access to our founders only group. And then just for folks here today at the expo, market timing blueprint. So this is a great tool, because this is going to tell you about intraday trading, where we're bleeding money when we make trades, what's the best trading platform for us, and how do we deploy using seasonal times and intraday and time of day, time of week to our advantage when it comes to entering and exiting these trades. Because again, we're not day trading, so time is on our side. We have a little bit of a luxury with that. And so this market timing blueprint is going to give you a way to fundamentally look at market timing differently. You'll also get the time advantage playbook, our trade ready checklist. So this is going to be a bulleted list to say, yes, I went through this particular section. I did this filter. I did this filter. And you work your way down the checklist for every trade systematically. And my little software tool will totally help you out with that. You also get the founders group access. And again, if you are one of the first 10 to enroll, then you will get the one-on-one strategy session where we customize your wealth blueprint together. All of this is in the Ground Zero to Growth options system, and it's what saved me. So now you can have it too. So if you want to get in on June 3rd, I encourage you to visit tradethirsty.com/earn. That's tradethirsty.com/earn. And then join me on the inside on June 3rd. I'll look forward to seeing you there.
All right, thank you very much, Heather, for that. And Heather, thanks for coming on. You did a great job. Hopefully everyone takes up your offer. And like I said, we'll have her on again. You'll get this thing recorded. You'll be able to see it and review all that. And once again, psychology has a lot to do with it. And it's all those things that you cover are very important. But thanks for coming, Heather, and look forward to having you back again. Enjoy your Memorial Day.
It's my pleasure, Fausto. And by the way, your people are already scheduling to have you appear on my show. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, looking forward to have you on. All right. Have a good day. So we got about 5 minutes, and I'm going to bring my next speaker in a little bit, which is a very good friend of mine, Jeff Gibley. But in the meantime, as we're waiting and for 5 minutes, and let me just share my screen with you, everyone.